Well, it looks like we're gathering a very good group of folks. I see a number of people in the audience who are followed by us here or follow us, and we have some others who've joined the room as well. We encourage a lively interaction around our one burning question. This is Michael Young, and I am one of the co-moderators for this. And an experienced clinical trialist and work with the Consuli team here as the Chief Marketing Officer. So very, very happy to have everybody here and super, super pleased to have Sophie Yohannan joining us as co-mod today. We have an outstanding panel together. So I think what we'll do is, since it looks like we've got a good group here, Julie, why don't you go ahead and officially open this room? Julie?
Yeah,
Sorry. Yeah, I was having audio problems earlier, so not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I got kicked out of the room for a second, but I'm back in, and as long as you can hear me, I'm good to go. So I'm Julie, host for this room and club. As we get started, just a few pointers. Go ahead, and everyone here, if you think that you know someone who might be interested in this conversation, you can use a little plus sign at the bottom to ping others into the room. If you have a lot of followers, use the search bar to narrow down to words that you think might be in that person's bio, things like that, so you don't get cut off. You can only ping so many people. How many people that is, we are not sure, but ping with caution. And be sure to follow me, all our moderators and panelists here today as well. Feel free to check out others in the room. With back channel now, you can send direct messages, which is great. Closed caption is now at the bottom of your screen and should be scrolling, which is a wonderful new addition from Clubhouse also. We do encourage audience participation, so if there's anyone that finds themselves inspired, feel free to raise your digital hand. We'll do our best to get to everyone. Please note, we are Consuli Conversations. In addition to this room, we host a Data Dignity Dealing You into the Data Economy and a Long COVID Where Patients Meet Researchers room. You can learn more by following our club. Just tap the little greenhouse at the top. Give us a follow and you'll get notifications of our upcoming rooms, and you'll be able to see what we have coming up. For any direct questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, if you'd like to join a future panel or have someone to recommend, I always love hearing from you guys. You can email me directly. My email is in my bio. And additionally, Consuli socials are in my bio, so please give us a follow. For those that don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts do suggest our data is worth $20,000 per year, so we help people choose who gets access to and how their personal information is used, and if and when get them paid for their data while making medicine better. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent. Our members receive smart-matched individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials and data trials. So there's no cost to join our movement, and you can learn more at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. It is now my pleasure to turn the floor over to our room moderators, Michael Young and Sophie.
Thanks, Julie.
Thank you.
At the risk of sounding like Good Morning Vietnam here, I welcome to everybody here to our clubhouse for clinical trialists, pharma industry execs, and the broad group of patients who are interested in solving the burning questions in clinical trials, especially those things that specifically affect them. We are really fortunate to work with Consuli in this regard. They're an innovative team who are enabling data and artificial intelligence for good, and in this case, specifically around healthcare and clinical trials. So during this time, the next hour and a half, we'll be addressing what we call our one burning question. And that question comes from discussion during the last few minutes of our previous room last month. And last month we had just an incredibly engaging discussion about the need for trust and how to build trust with clinical sites, and in particular with patient enrollees. And we're really encouraged to carry that conversation on and get down to some specifics about how to build that trust. So I'm going to get this kicked off with passing things over to Sophie Yohannan, and she is going to give you a little background on herself and why she's so specially equipped to help us lead this discussion. Sophie?
Thanks, Michael. And thanks, Julie. I am thrilled to be here again for our monthly Clubhouse discussion on clinical trials. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Sophie Yohannan. I am a clinical evaluation scientist at a medical device company called Boston Scientific. And before that, I have 18 years experience in clinical research across multiple different therapeutic areas and many different roles. I have been at the hospital at the site level, and I have now at the sponsor level. I work closely with IRBs, and I have actually requested emergency use access to chemotherapeutic agents. So, Christine, I know, I understand what you're going through. It's not easy. These are some of the burning questions that we have in clinical trials. So I really love taking this opportunity each month to bring trial enthusiasts into the room and talk about these one burning questions. So thanks to Julie and others for inviting me to co-moderate this discussion. We're going to be opening up the discussion this month's one burning question here really soon about trust. I think it's a super important topic. We touched on it last month, and we are going to dive deep and talk about the solutions in a minute. But before that, let's say hello to some of the folks we have on stage here with us. Let's begin with Sandra. Sandra, can you introduce yourself to us, please?
Why, most certainly. Good day, everyone. My name is Sandra. I'd like to consider myself to actually be the patient's voice. I am a board certified patient advocate, and I'm always looking for ways that we as patients and patient advocates can come together to answer those questions to get people more involved with any type of options that are available to them. So I was asked to come on and speak, and I love being here because I love hearing what each side has to offer to this equation. So thank you so much for having me. I will listen in and I will talk when asked. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Next, let's hear from Edie. I know Edie very well, but Edie, can you please introduce yourself for everyone?
Hi, Sophie, and hi, everyone. I'm so excited. In my one burning question, short-lived history, I think this is the first time we've done like a extended session 2 on a topic, right? So I'm super pumped about this. I'm Edie Edens. So I am a licensed, attorney and professional ethicist, very specific to research compliance and research ethics. I work with a consulting firm called First Class Solutions out of the St. Louis area, although I'm based out of Indy. I have the unique privilege to teach at the IU McKinney School of Law in the area of life sciences and vaccine compliance. And I'm in my second decade of doing this work. I've been, in-house at a large academic medical center, as well as in the freelance space, working with all sorts of different types of clients, patient advocates, recruitment firms, CTMS, and of course, research sites. And so I love sitting down with this group to talk about ways that we can improve our industry and hear from so many amazing folks from so many different vantage points. I'd also like to give a shout to you, Christine. I had no idea, I've been a bit underwater, that you were feeling so poorly and having such a struggle. I'm so sorry to hear that. I'm so sorry. My heart is with you. Thank you so much. I'm Edie. I'm complete.
Thanks, Edie. And next we have Brad Hightower. Brad, can you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey guys, I'm Brad. I operate a site network. Throughout my career, I've worked at the site level almost 15 years now. I worked across academia, physician-owned hospitals, private practices as well. Our focus right now is providing research infrastructure for physicians and physician groups so that they can participate in trials without having to hire a whole team. So we're essentially able to set up shop within an individual physician practice so that they can offer clinical trial opportunities to their patients. So yeah, I've managed to see a lot of different site models, and I'm really interested to contribute to the conversation today. Thanks, guys.
Excellent. And Christine, will you grace us with your introduction next?
Sure, I'm Christine von Reesfeld, and thank you, Edie. It's been rough. I was just diagnosed with COVID and had a really, really bad experience. So anyone out there who is on the fence about getting vaccinated, please do for people like me. But I am CEO, founder of a small nonprofit, People with Empathy, and really just we're working to break down the silos in healthcare. I've been speaking on clinical trials for quite a few years now. I consult with startup companies at this point, and I think it's collective intelligence and collaborative leadership that are going to be the key to our problems and be able to find our solutions. So, and I am also curious as to how Taya and Sophie, you guys have your little symbols on your. I've been off Clubhouse for a while, so I'm envious of your little symbols there. So if anyone can help me out with that later,
I was trying to figure that out while everyone was talking. I'm not even going to lie. This is Edie.
That definitely, this is the Black History Month. And so in order to demonstrate support, we have the fist or the black heart to demonstrate that. So the way you do that is you put that symbol in your profile. Use the emojis to put that symbol in your profile with a space before the next character, and it will appear in your profile picture. All right, Dr. Ostro, thank you so much for joining us. You've been so regular and faithful. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and especially to see all the different disciplines and areas of experience that people bring to this, so that we can have the kind of discussion that's really necessary here when we talk about trust, because there's so many things that impact on that. Myself, I'm an MD PhD trained in psychiatry and neuropsychopharmacology research, and I did most of my clinical trial work early on in my career. With the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, I led the effort to study the natural history of HIV and AIDS, this going on, and had a lot of clinical add-on studies. But through that work and my patient work, I became very interested in clinical cannabis as medicine, and currently I am about to implement, in conjunction with the Integrated Providers Association, a national network of clinician investigators who will be doing observational research studies of all patients in their practices, starting on cannabinoid therapy for pain and depression and PTSD and opioid use disorders. I really think that's the way we have to go right now, while cannabis is still prohibited, in order to develop harm reduction treatments to control the opioid OD epidemic and the suicide epidemic that's occurring so much. And COVID has only added to the degree of the impact of these intersecting epidemics. So that's why I'm here, and I was very happy to hear Brad talk about working with clinicians to give them the tools to do research in their practices, because that's what the community-based clinical cannabis evaluation research network is all about.
Wow, exciting, Dr. Ostro. Thank you for sharing with us. And next, Taya Romero, can you please introduce yourself for us?
Sure. Thank you, Sophie. My name is Taya Romero. I work in clinical research. My passion is neurodiversity and how to increase neurodiversity not only in clinical trials, but also in our workforce. So I come from a background of psychology and business, and I combine those two to help create solutions for neurodiversity. I myself am neurodivergent, so I'm excited to be included in this conversation and how we can look at neurodivergent and what that means to DEI. Thank you.
Fantastic. I'm excited about this. We're going to have all different perspectives. And Caroline joined us. Caroline, Would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hi there, hi there. Lovely to be in the room. Thank you for inviting me to the panel, Julie. I'm a clinical research professional, been working within clinical for a number of years now, based in the UK. Started off as a CRA and travelled up and down the country monitoring on lots of different studies. Learnt a lot, and now I provide consultancy services to pharma, biotech, CROs, and I'm just enjoying the troubleshooting that comes with the role, and also I love the fact that I'm doing something that I love, which is, helping people who are in a position of maybe having an illness and trying to help their quality of life in some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. Well, thank you to all of our panelists for introducing themselves. I think after listening to all of you, I realize we have more in common than I realized. What I didn't mention before, I have a medical background prior to my start in clinical trials, and I'm also an instructor, a clinical research instructor. And one thing I always tell my students is to make the clinical trial participant, the patient, the enrollee, feel like a VIP. And that's going to lead us into our today's one burning question. Last month, we explored issues of trust for clinical trial participants. This month's OBQ focuses on what specific tactics have worked or would work to build trust between patient enrollees, their clinical sites, clinical protocols, and sponsors of these trials, so the partners as well. How do diversity, equity, and inclusion issues impact trust building? So one thing I can offer is when I used to be at the hospital level, at the site level, I did make a point to treat patient enrollees like VIPs. And I explained to them that as they're enrolling in this trial for this investigational drug or device, or an approved drug or device that's now being tested for a new indication, their testing or the number of visits we needed to see them would surpass the normal standard of care because we had to collect a certain amount of data to ensure safety and efficacy of the drug or safety and effectiveness of the device. It has to be at least as safe and effective as what's already on the market, the standard of care. In order to do that, we had to see them more often than what their standard of care would have been if they didn't enroll in the trial. What that means is that we are very vigilant about their prognosis, about their progress with their condition with this particular clinical trial. So if we're more vigilant, isn't that better for them? That's how I explain it to a patient. I also would ask for their permission to reach out to their primary care physician, their PCP, and let their physician know that they are enrolling in a trial, and also discuss prior medications and past medical history with the PCP to make sure we're on the same page. And if the patient has an adverse event or some sort of reaction or a contraindicated medication, we would all be aware and we would all be working as a team. And by the way, the patient is part of this team. So with that, I want to open it up to the panel to start talking about this topic. Again, please raise your hand if you'd like to be called onto the stage when we get to that section so Julie can start bringing you up. For now, I would love to start with Michael and then move to each panelist from there. Go ahead, Michael.
Thanks, Sophie. I'll tell you what, I think that this entire category of understanding how critical trust is and how trust is, if you will, moderated and colored by things such as diversity, equity, and inclusion are particularly important in today's modern trial environment. 2.5 years ago, I would say that the understanding of clinical trials and the need for inclusion and diversity in these trials in order to get the best data really wasn't understood so as a positive byproduct of the COVID pandemic, there's no doubt about it that in every home today there is a much better understanding of clinical trials. However, that understanding doesn't really get deep enough when it comes time for somebody to say, I want to be in a clinical trial, or I have a need to be in a clinical trial. Let's not forget that clinical trials are now very much so a treatment option. So one of the things that I think might help us as a group of people who are interested in improving trust among patients who are thinking of enrolling would be to up our skill levels in terms of understanding the importance and the way in which trust can be built. So I've asked Julie to actually pin a resource to the top of this conversation here, which is an outstanding book that was written several years ago called The Speed of Trust, and really takes a baseline look at what it takes to have some skill sets and some tools to help us build trust here. So she'll post that up there, and I simply use the Amazon link, but the book is available from a number of different sources. This is Michael, and I'm done speaking.
All right, great way to start. So with that, let us start this conversation, and let's start with Sandra. Sandra, tell us, what do you think are the top? What are your most important factors when thinking about trust between a patient, a provider, and a clinical trial professional or a sponsor? And what tactics have you used or would you like to use in your practice to ensure trust between these partners?
Thank you so much for asking that very important question, Sophie. So for me, as with most of the clients I talk to, as with myself as being a patient, you have to have a level of not only trust, but transparency. So you have to understand that when talking to patients, a lot of times, it all depends on what their educational level is of understanding what it is that they're being told by the clinician. So if you're talking to a patient who has a low level of education and you're trying to get them involved in some type of clinical trial, something that will be beneficial to them, then you have to break that language down, that language of trust, that language of transparency. You have to break that down into a level that they understand. So it's going to be critically important, and it is critically important that when clinicians are talking to patients, they're understanding what level they're coming to them as a patient. They're taking the time to understand, okay, well, where have you been at in this process already? Let's do some pre-work just to see. If you don't understand what level they're on as far as understanding, have a pre-level done, a pre-talk done. See where they're at as far as their mind is concerned. See what they will understand and what they won't understand, because you can have all the trust in the world between the patient and the clinician. However, if that transparency is lost, or if the patient starts to feel like, okay, well, there's something else going on here that I'm really not understanding, and they're really not telling me, then the lines of communications are broken down, and then the patient becomes non-compliant. And it's not non-compliant because they want to be non-compliant. It's non-compliant because they do not understand what it is that they are being told. And yes, it helps to have, a family involved, the primary care doctor involved, but those people are not the patient. So it's really important that you understand what it is that the patient wants and what it is that the patient needs in order for the patient to get any type of beneficial service out of anything that's offered to them. This is Sandra, and I'm complete for now.
Brilliant, Sandra. So what I'm hearing is to tailor your conversation with the patient, instructions and questions based on that patient's background, level of understanding, and what he or she has expressed as their needs. I think that's brilliant. Thank you so much. Next, let's go to Edie. Edie, will you tell us what has worked for you, or what do you think would work in this situation to build trust?
So incredibly important conversation here, Sophie, and thank you so much, Sandra. It's so nice to hear from all of you. I'm going to keep my comments really short and kick the can, if you will, or punt a little bit to Taya, as I really had shared some interesting trust demographics and research I had found this week in preparing for our call with her and Michael, and so I want to make sure that I allocate that time. But I have to say, as I was preparing for this conversation, some of you know I'm an avid sports fan, and I happened to be at one of my favorite places to have a beer and watch some football last Sunday, and I sat down next to someone who clearly wanted to have a conversation, was also there solo, and I was like, oh, I'm trying to get some work done. Okay, I'm going to be friendly. And it just so happened this person had a very anti-vax t-shirt on and was clearly very apt to talk about it without obviously knowing who I was or what I happened to do. Like I said, we're at a sports bar setting. And so I tried to stay away from the topic really hard because I was trying to really enjoy my Sunday, and I just didn't want to go there or have an argument or anything in public with someone. And the individual sounded very intelligent and was talking about the type of work he does, which happened to be in supply chain, and asked me what I did, and I shared. And as we began to talk, I realized he, while very diametrically opposed to my own views on vaccination and our approaches to COVID, wasn't being flagrant or rude, had, in his opinion, done a lot of research and homework, and had data in his mind, right, behind his opinions. And so I asked him if I could ask him a few questions. And what it came back to was very much trust. Trusting of establishment, trusting of healthcare, trusting based on what he chose to share with me of prior memories as a patient, and having his children go through certain experiences in our system. And it opened a very interesting conversation internally for me about that process. So hearing you talk about that, Sandra, really harkens me to think how important, we already knew it was, but how much more important is trust in our current environment and what we're dealing with. So I'm going to park that there. And like I said, if you're up for it, and if it's okay with the moderators in the room, I'd love to spend the rest of what I would have spent jabbing and jawing here, listening to the neurodivergent components to trust and patience. This is Edie. I'm done speaking. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Edie. Yeah, I think so much of what you said about the trust issue has come up for me recently when speaking with some people that have been anti-vax, and things that we've really in this country, I think, made things black and white. And it's not really black and white. There's a lot of gray in there, and there's a lot of reasons why people are hesitant and don't trust the messaging. The message changed, but the people weren't told the message could change up front. They were told these are experts. They know exactly 100% what is right, and you need to follow this, right? But when that is changing, then people start to not believe you if they think, oh, you lied to us. They didn't lie. That's the scientific process. But people in the general population, they are not scientists. They're not aware of the scientific process and creating hypothesis and testing and changing your ideas. That's not how they think. They think you're the expert. You're providing 100% of the solution. And I think that communication really it was poorly communicated. And now where do we go from here? Are we able to reset? And I don't think we are, unfortunately, in a position where we can reset that messaging, but we can start moving forward with different messages. And for the neurodiverse, everyone's different. Every person that is neurodiverse is different. But for me, I like to know exactly what the message is. I don't like a lot of talk, a lot of flowery language. I just want to know what the core message is. And I think that goes back to simple communication. And a lot of people aren't comfortable with just basic communications, which are asking questions. Just asking questions. If you don't understand something, just simply ask why. You know, who, what, where, when, why. Those are the basic communication questions that you need answered. So start there and form your statement in a way that includes people and not excludes people. Because when you start talking basics, then people are going to be on board and they're going to understand. And I'm not saying to like lower the expectation or lower what you're saying, but just complete the thought. I think so many times the thoughts are given in pieces or segments and they're not a complete thought. And then you assume that person understands exactly what you meant, but they don't. They're putting in a lot of effort to fill in those blanks and create stories in their head. So you need to try to eliminate that by giving them the information that they need to have the complete thought. So that would be my advice on how to be more inclusive of neurodiversity. It happens with this practice of questioning thoughts, making sure you're communicating a complete who, what, when, where scenario. And of course, with certain things that have happened recently with scientific observations and explaining how that works to the public, it's going to be difficult, but we need to start somewhere. So I say start simply. And I'll pass it back to you, Sophie.
Great, Taya. That was so enlightening. I think you touched on a few points that connects with what Sandra was saying too, because I too prefer direct communication, direct questions, no flowery language, no beating around the bush. And I ask lots of questions. For those who know me, I've been branded as the curious cat. I ask lots of questions and not everyone prefers that. But what we do have to keep in mind is that, like you said, Taya, everyone is different. And actually, not everyone prefers such direct communication, direct questions, or direct prose. Some people prefer a different type of communication. And I think, like Sandra said, we have to assess that with the patient, with the partner, with the sponsor, with the physician, to make sure that we are communicating in a way that they will be able to receive and process and respond in their own time and in their own comfort level. So that's super important. Thank you for bringing that up. And next, I'd like to go to Brad, who's been waiting so patiently. Thanks, Brad.
Thanks, Sophie. Yeah, so it occurred to me, when you think about building trust with research participants, what the journey looks like, right? So without overgeneralizing too much, I mean, the physician may often introduce a study opportunity to a patient, but more often than not, the research coordinator at the site is really doing most of the communication with the patient, right? And I feel like hasn't always been such an emphasis on it. I really feel like it's customer service. I mean, what we're doing to a large degree is customer service, and it hasn't been framed that way. And instead, I like to often say that clinical research is too clinical, right? Like we sometimes avoid seeing it as customer service, but I think if we sort of begin to reframe it that way, things change, and that includes being transparent and taking the time to properly educate potential research participants, which also includes, to speak to Taya and Edie's points, that and Sandra as well, determining how they like to be communicated with, and that's a sort of a undervalued skill, right? I mean, not everybody wants to hear it the same way, and I think you have to be able to sort of read the room and see how you can best address that with your patients, and that's not an easy feat necessarily, especially in a field that I think values, scientific background oftentimes more than the soft skills that are involved in communicating with patients. It's not always the case, but I think that's sometimes been an issue. And it goes beyond that too. I mean, just beyond that, you've got to, be able to respond quickly to your patients and take their feedback, build a connection. Clinical trial participation is not a transactional relationship, right? I mean, you're truly building a relationship with research participants, and all the things that entails. And that's maybe not the most sophisticated answer, but I feel like if sites can sort of reframe, clinical trial participation and their jobs as more customer service oriented, I think that'll go a long way towards building trust with participants. And I'm Brad, and that's it.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. And I've spoken about this before. That relationship, that trust relationship is built over time, right? It's not a one-time deal. It is a process that we build on one brick by brick. And as we get to know our trial participants, or as physicians get to know sponsors, or sponsors get to know CROs, or CRCs get to know their IRB administrators. These relationships are like spider webs, and we get to build each strand, each string of the spider web one step at a time. So if you skip a step, you're not going to have a strong web in the end, right? It takes time, it takes quality, and it's worth the investment. So yeah, absolutely agree with you, Brad. Christine, I would love to hear from you next, from your perspective.
Sure, I have been writing notes and been dying to speak. You guys know me. But I think one of the first things I have to say is that trust is a huge issue, and it's not just in clinical trials, but it's with our whole healthcare system in general. You have patients out there like me who have been misdiagnosed, who have had to fight for their own diagnoses and had to prove themselves. And so we're talking clinical trials right now with people who don't even understand how to talk to their own physician. And I think that's one of the things that we really have to look at as we move forward, is how to have open conversations and establish this trust to really be able to talk about these things. And as you were all talking, I was thinking about, dating. It's a disaster nowadays if you're single, but we have books on love languages, right? You don't talk to your spouse in this or show them love in the same way that you want it. You have to learn and understand how they need to hear things in order to build that kind of relationship. And I think we need to look at that. We have a lot of very smart people in this industry, but not a lot of high emotional intelligence. And so I think we need to bring that back and really just start talking about the relationships that we're having with patients, and transparency. We all talk about data, and Consuli is all about data here too as well. And we're not even having the conversations around data with patients. We are literally just giving them a paper to sign at their moment where they're thinking this is their only hope, and they have to sign that paper to get treatments. And so we really just need to reevaluate, I think, the relationship that we have, and know that these patients are not sick people that are burdens. These people are now doing their own research. They're becoming citizen scientists, and they are forming groups. And if we don't start to collaborate with patients, they will start to do this on their own. And I think that's one of the things that we all have to think about. So I'm Christine. For now, that's my perspective.
Great, Christine. Thank you so much. We are almost at the time for a reset. Before I turn the mic over to Julie, I would love to hear from Susie, who has some great examples for us. Susie, take it away.
Thank you so much for inviting me to the stage. So I am situated in Denmark in Europe, and it's very cold here right now, and it's also nighttime. And I've been working in the space of innovation in the health and care sector for the last decade. And what we often see when we have a device, a technology that is on trial, is that the largest obstacle to the process and to implement the positive findings is actually the lack of trust from clinicians, meaning doctors, nurses, physiotherapists. And I know several examples where technology that have shown great results in trials actually were never used because of this mistrust to new technologies that would change the way that you work. So I'll just give you an example from a Danish research project that came out last week. It was something that most of you can relate to about rehabilitation in a COVID time that had been done remotely. One physiotherapist in a room with a big screen watching up to 8 patients, long patients, doing training in their own home with a tablet with a camera on it, so they could see both the physiotherapist's movements and also the physiotherapist could see them on her own screen. So in advance, before the project, the clinicians were asked, what do you think would be the largest obstacle in this? And the interesting thing that the professionals, there were several layers of professionals around the patient. And the group that said, we do not think that the patient will be able to use the technology was 90% the doctors, the ones that were furthest away from the patient, and the physiotherapist. But it was the least for the daily caregivers who were closest to the patient. It was going from the most highly educated people were the most not trusting of technology, from 90% for people closest to the patients to 15%. And when they had ran the trial, they then asked the patients, did you like the technology? And they say, yes, we prefer the technology to coming to a training center and training there. So this brief example, I can come up with several more if any of you are interested, but this brief example just shows that there's a huge topic. It's also clinicians. Their reasons for being hesitant are several. One of them is that, can I be the high quality professional that I understand myself as when using other tools and daily work routines? So it's insecurity if whether you can perform as professional. The second part is that you're insecure of the technology. We can be a bit embarrassed, all of us, when we can't find out using a new feature in Clubhouse. So think of a professional that has people's life and health in their hands, to think, well, maybe if the technology fails, maybe if people think I look stupid when I'm doing the exercise or telling them what to do. So there's these personal barriers as well. And then, of course, you're insecure of the monetization of it. Will it pay at the end to do it this way? So a lot of barriers are coming from the clinicians. And unfortunately, going so far that in trials, the results were great. But in real life, I can mention at least 2 examples because you're not Danish, where physicians have, without knowing that I knew the company, would tell me why they actually blocked robot training to be used because they didn't like the founders of the company, full stop. And because they didn't like their everyday routines to be disturbed, full stop. And that was it, and they blocked it, and it was not implemented in the municipality where the city council decided it should have been implemented. So yeah, this was some perspective from Denmark and from the wonderful world of innovation. And sometimes you try to get it to happen, and sometimes you succeed, and sometimes you don't. Thank you for this room. I very much enjoy to hear the different perspectives.
Sophie, this is Michael, and that is outstanding. Really appreciate the insight, and am wondering if the data that you discussed is published or available. If there's a way that you can send us a link or a bibliography citation, we'd love to be able to see that, and we can share that with the assembled group. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Michael. I will look for it. It was actually in a tele conference on Thursday last week, and it was just as the PowerPoint presentation, and I made screen dumps, so that's why I could give you some of the numbers. I will check if there's a public stage on this, but it will probably be in Danish. So I'll do what I can, but not being very hopeful about it. But I'll do what I can, definitely. Thank you.
Many thanks. Sophie?
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Susie. I will be looking out for your message as well. And now I think it's time for a room reset, so I will pass it to Julie.
Hi, everyone. This is Julie, project manager at Consuli and host for our clinical trials room. I hope everyone's enjoying this conversation. It's really great to have this in 2 parts. It's been really fun. So for anyone who didn't get a chance to listen to part 1 of this trust conversation, you can check out replays in our profile. And just a little bit about Consuli's mission here. We're a public benefit company working to create a marketplace where we deal individuals like you and me into the data economy and help make medicine better by smart matching patients with clinical trials that are right for them. We're creating a movement and there's no cost to join. Check us out and sign up. I've pinned the link to our website at the top of the room. And you can find our website links to our socials, my direct email, and my bio. Reach out to me directly if you have any questions. And be sure to follow our club for our next upcoming rooms. And you could take this moment to ping others that may be interested in conversation that you think might want to join us. Just use a little plus sign at the bottom. And for anyone feeling inspired, please raise your digital hand, join the conversation if you'd like. We'll do our best to get to everyone. Thanks again so much for joining us. I'm going to pass the mic back to Michael. This is Julie, and I'm done speaking.
Thanks, Julie. I think that this has been already a very engaging discussion here. I would certainly like to come back to something that Brad had brought up earlier about customer service attitude. And I think that there's real value to thinking about the interactions with patients in particular in this regard. Not only do we need them to make sure that they're enrolling in the trials, but we need to make sure that patients can feel comfortable staying in a trial and continuing to the end. I'll certainly tee off on Brad's comments about that, but I think expectations need to be given in very, very plain language, and so that people can understand exactly what's there. And as Susie has pointed out, sometimes the technology and the fear about technology gets in the way. So I think that, David, you've been very patient waiting there. I'd reach out to you and see what comments that you might have. David?
Hi, I was having trouble getting my microphone back on. Wow, so many topics and themes here. I don't know where to begin. So maybe I'll take it back to trust and build on what Susie was saying. Another very important dimension of that is trust between the clinician and the research project or clinical project. I know when I've been on the side of trying to recruit patients from my colleagues, the issue either explicitly or implicitly very often was, am I going to lose the patient if I put them into your trial somehow? Because they're going to find that whatever therapy or medication you're testing is better than what I'm able to give them. And, there really is this issue of educating our peers as well as the patients about how the trial is being structured and have input from clinicians as to what would make them feel more comfortable referring patients to a clinical trial. And the other thing I wanted to say is we cannot divorce this conversation from the larger conversation of general trust and mistrust of science in an age of so many different alternate realities and misinformation and people thinking that they're getting a medical degree on Google or whatever. There's just so much of that problem, and it really interferes in the patient clinician relationship. And I don't have an answer, but I certainly know that the electronic medical record, which was supposed to make things so much better and so much more efficient and improve and give the physician more time with the patient, really has done just the opposite.
Yes.
Um, and so when somebody said we have to reset things, but we don't know if we can reset things. If we're going to reset things, it has to be at a very basic level. It has to be at the level of having healthcare, which has become so atomized and so conflictual, back to a patient-centered, community-based, and wellness-oriented, and reward practitioners for keeping people healthy rather than for treating disease. And I think if we reset things at that level, which is an enormous task, I realize, we will be able to resolve some of these other issues, but they cannot be resolved in isolation. And I'm David, and that's all I'm going to say for now.
Oh, David, you are speaking my language. This is exactly what I wrestle with, and I can't stop talking about it. We have to go back like 10 levels, to get back to this level where we are making preventative medicine the top priority and not tertiary care, not the fun, sexy procedures that cost a lot of money and, all the facilities and equipment, but back to preventative care where the physician and the patient had a one-on-one deep relationship, and the physician really knew that patient inside and out, the background, the medical history, surgical history, social history, and was able to recommend different paths and the right path, the best path, based on that individual patient's history and preferences. And you're right, the EMR has not made anything easier. Actually, actually caused a lot of physicians to be looking at the screen, trying to take notes, progress notes during a visit instead of looking a patient in the eye. And how do we get back to that, primordial level? I'm not sure exactly how to get there, but that would be the ideal step. So I 100% agree with you. But I want to give Caroline a chance to provide her input and share her voice here because she's been waiting so patiently. So Caroline, please share with us.
Oh, thank you, Sophie. So many amazing points have been made so far, but I just wanted to go back to education. I just think that education is key, and my experience, particularly with physicians, is that they don't tend to really understand what a trial is or how it works until they actually get involved in one. And I'm not sure how much clinical trials are referenced as a treatment option during medical school training, but I believe that this level of understanding amongst doctors early on in their training, something like this could empower them to advocate trials as a treatment option rather than kind of a last resort option when, a diagnosis has been made and a potential patient is then in quite a lot of shock and trauma. So I think that education is key, and I just think we need to try and facilitate clinical trials as something that's part of our community rather than something that just a small minority of people might interact with because there's nothing else for them. So yeah, that's my first point. It's just about the education. Thank you.
Thank you, Caroline. That was brilliant. Yeah, if we increase awareness about clinical trials, the purpose of clinical trials, the availability of clinical trials, how you access that information as a patient, as a provider, as a caregiver, then maybe there would be less issues with trust. If they're able to access that information easier, that would take care of part of this issue. So at this point, I want to hear if anyone has any tips or tricks. What has worked for you? How have you engendered trust with your patients, with your physicians, with your sponsors, with your CROs or any partners. I see Christine tapping her mic and Edie. So maybe Christine, go ahead and take the mic.
Sure. So I think in one of the things that's helped me, not only in my own personal care, but in my relationships as I'm working with industry, is always asking what you can do to help that person get to their goals and what, how we need to work together. And it's helped me in so many different ways, right? When I'm working with personal physicians, when I'm asking them, what can I do to help you? Help me, we get to a different level of understanding. And I think one of those things that we really have to do is build these relationships, right? We have to realize that the patient communities that we're working with, if something doesn't work out with the product or the drug or the therapy that we're working on, that is still a community that needs help. And they're going to, even if you do solve something for them, there is going to be another issue that comes up. So building that relationship and sticking through it and actually being there to support those communities and finding out what they actually need, I think is something that we don't do very often. And going back to the education, I really think we need to reframe the whole idea of clinical trials as it is. And we need to start teaching kids about it. We need to start offering it when you enroll in a healthcare system and let people know that this is an option for care. That you are not subject to have to go through what you've seen all of your friends and family go through with horrible drugs. You have a choice. And I think if we reframe it into an idea where we are actually empowering people and making them feel like this is an option instead of, their fate, it might change things a little bit. So I'm Christine, and that's my perspective there.
Excellent, Christine. Teach kids about it. Wow. We talked about bringing it to medical schools, but what about bringing it to colleges? What about bringing it to high schools? What about, talking about clinical trials in our curriculum, in our public school curriculum? I mean,
Sophie,
that's,
if I could interrupt you for just 1 second.
yeah.
When I was in high school, I was not a good student. I was always sick. I could get out of class whenever I wanted to. Science was not a subject that interested me until I found out that it could actually change my life.
Yeah.
And now I am fascinated, right? I have done things with my health and tailored my own care in ways that other people couldn't. But if as a kid, I knew that there was some value in science that could actually help me as a person, I would have been so much more into it. And
Oh,
so sorry to interrupt, but that
no,
I had to
so
get that in.
inspiring. I was just going to say, you're just so inspiring because you are every woman, right? You are every child. We all grow up with those types of feelings, and we don't know, just for those of us who happen to have an interest in science, it's not because we knew everything that it could do for us personally as we grew, as we became adults, as we had to face some of these health issues. So absolutely, I agree with you. And by the way, nice black heart, Christine. And same to you, Edie. Nice black heart. Good job. And I'll pass the mic to Edie next. And I think Taya has something to add as well right after that.
Thank you so much, Sophie. This is Edie. And to you, Christine, and everyone else. It's interesting. I was already geeked out. I've been wanting to get on here since Brad said the words customer service, because I have so much to say about this. And so this is where, I think I have to share that, and many of you have heard me say this, I come from a very strong healthcare provider family, and I also come from a strong entrepreneur line. And when I was growing up, I remember, and still, he does this. My father was involved in many different educational opportunities for healthcare folks at all different levels, despite his own, and he was often asked to give talks or commencement speeches. And he always started with a story because he said, I know, you see me up here, I'm 60 plus, I'm a sophisticated white male, clearly privileged with a lot of initials after my name. And so here you are today thinking this guy has no idea, right? Like I'm graduating with my CNA or my, tech degree. Like he hasn't lived my life. He has no idea. Well, let me tell you about when I started as an orderly cleaning floors at 14. at Methodist Hospital in Dallas, because that's where my real health career started, right? And let me tell you all the different terrible jobs that you probably, would never believe I've done before I got there. And he would end the talk with a charge to them. And it was based on, not only do you have to bring excellence to your job, because guess what, you're in healthcare, but it really set this very empathetic approach tone for me. And not only because I knew he was really passionate about what he did, really cared about his patients, kept up with them for years, the whole bit, but he did it because it was the right thing to do, not because it paid the bills. And what he would charge the graduates, no matter the program with remembering was, like, you think you're having a bad day, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Okay, we've all been there, right? Maybe you really do have some troubling things in your life right now. Again, we've all been through those tough times. But imagine being the patient, especially if you work in any type of urgent care. Like, you're terrified. You're so terrified you've raced yourself to see your physician, to an urgent care facility, to an ED. And the first thing we ask you to do is take off all your clothes, put on a gown that we didn't even splurge for a back on, and a whole bunch of strangers are going to come in the room at once and start poking you.
Oh, yes.
Right? And so, like, you think you're having a bad day. Hold up. And it just set this incredible tone. And in my own career, I think the thing that we have to, remember, and something I'm very outspoken about, is emotional quotients in the workplace. And I say it not only because of this great conversation about trust and patient advocacy, but even more importantly, for those of you who don't know, clinical trial work has over 40% turnover. That's just how we're treating each other. That's just how we're communicating and showing and exhibiting empathy in our own workplace. You think that doesn't reach the patient? You think they don't feel that? You think your kid doesn't know when you and your partner are arguing? Come on, right? That's not how it works. And so I think it's incredibly critical for us to have first these conversations focused around patient care and how we're interacting and what our stumbling blocks are and how we get back to an empathy and emotionally intelligent driven exercise. I think the next step is what Christine's talking about as far as education, but I would say we take it a step further. I'm teaching my law students right now who are focusing on health law what the heck EQ is. And I'm teaching it to them not just because I really give a darn about how they're going to go out there and treat clients and patients, but because it's a way for them to truly level up and show that they stand out in a crowd of otherwise, frankly, very highly qualified, highly intelligent, and highly productive people. And then I think step 3, once you get past that educational point, is to apply it in our workforce, how we're treating each other, how a CRO and a sponsor are interacting with one another, right? Because if we could do it on all 3 levels, imagine the innovation that we could accomplish. This is Edie, and I'm complete.
Thanks, Edie. Absolutely truth. Absolutely truth there at every level, not just between the patient and the provider, but also between the provider and the sponsor or the CRO or the partners. Those relationships, if they're not strong, or especially if they go sour, can be felt. The strength of those relationships are palpable even by the patient. So yes, we have to be vigilant. We have to be aware of that. Next, I know Taya had something really important to share. I wanted to give her the floor.
Yes, Sophie, can you hear me okay? Yes. I keep getting a red bar.
Oh, I can hear you,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, great. So my question is, are we building or are we repairing trust? Because I think most people that are in the DEI area would say we are repairing trust. And that is on all levels, right? Not just clinical research, but just your relationship with your doctor. A lot, I have friends, people of color, that all have stories about being treated terribly by their healthcare provider, like completely terribly. Things that just blow your mind. And that is a trauma. So we have created this trauma environment in healthcare, and now we have to repair that. So how are we going to repair the trauma that has destroyed the trust? I think when we're talking about building trust and creating new pathways, that's completely different conversation than repairing the damage that has been done to not only people of color, but neurodiversity and all of the different groups, LGBTQIA, they also have tons of trauma in this system that we've built. So how are we going to repair that? That was my question. Thank you.
If I could add to that, because you did mention LGBTQ, and that's how I got started in gay health, because after starting a support group for gay medical students in Chicago, we started to get um, members of the community coming to us and say how traumatic it was getting tested and treated at the city of Chicago's STD clinics. And so we ended up starting up our own STD clinic, and that was the first gay community sponsored clinic in the United States. But it always, whether it's rebuilding or building, to me, the very important factor is judgment and being non-judgmental. And no matter who we are and how we think we're woke or whatever, we all have biases and judgments that have been ingrained and taught to us, from the beginning. We're born without them, but we very soon find ourselves responding to other people's judgments in the form of punishments and rewards that are placed on us. And so I always start my conversations with physicians with saying to them, how do you make your patients feel at ease talking about subject X? And it's so common for a physician to say, well, I just don't bring it up unless the patient brings it up. And so there's this game being played back and forth between patients and physicians. Should I bring this up, or will my clinician reject me or treat me, humiliate me? And on the physician side, should I bring this up, or will the patient feel that I'm probing into personal areas of their life that I shouldn't be? And developing ways to communicate across that barrier, I think, are important and are essential to either building or rebuilding trust. And that's David, and that's all I want to say about that.
David, that is a great point, and I'm going to pick on you a little bit more because you brought that up. How can you tell us, how have you handled this in your practice when you're faced with a patient who maybe you don't know as well, and you want to ask one of those poignant questions, but you're not sure how the patient is going to feel or respond? How do you approach that type of situation?
Well, there's no one answer to that. But when I find myself, or I used to find myself very often teaching groups of students who wanted to know more about the healthcare needs of sexual minorities and so forth, and I would say, if first of all, be willing to admit that you need to learn, and that your patients can actually teach you a lot, because they're the experts in the area that you're trying to find out about. But to open up the conversation with your patient, I always say, don't ask a specific pointed question, but say something like, there are a lot of things in your life, social, behavioral, interpersonal, and so forth, that may have an impact on your health and may be important to what kinds of health care problems you need to address here and so forth. So I would like to ask you about these things, and if at any point you feel uncomfortable, please tell me, and we'll stop, or we'll talk about why you feel uncomfortable talking about that. But I think that giving that kind of general opening to the patient, that you bring this up not because you have some purity interest in some aspect of their life, but because you really want to know them as a human being, as not just their biology but their social biology.
I love that, David. Thank you so much. Open the floor, right? Give them the invitation to share if they so wish, if they're comfortable doing it. Give them that open window, but don't push them into a spot that might be uncomfortable. I really respect that. I think that's a great point, and we should take that forward with us. I saw that Brad had unmiked, and maybe he had something to add, and Susie has unmiked. Um, maybe one of you take it from here.
Actually, go ahead, Sophie. I was just clapping along here.
Yeah, there's a lot to clap about. I agree on that. So just going back to the question of giving advice on how to deal with the lack of trust, I have a couple of tips for clinicians who are about to enter being part of trials with the technical devices. And the first tip I would say is brace yourself. And the reason why I suggest that is because using technology for many people are getting out of your comfort zone. So just realizing that you will get out of your comfort zone, probably, that would be very helpful for the process, I think. I think what was mentioned in just before as well, to know that you don't know what you don't know. You don't know your patient's needs. As the example that I mentioned, that the doctors didn't know that the patients were ready to use technology, and it was actually them who were the barrier. So enter this journey, bracing yourself in, I'm going to realize things about technology, but also about myself and my own personal barriers, not in my field expertise, but in another field that can help me grow in my field of expertise. The last thing I would have a suggestion is that one of the things that entrepreneurs, innovators, the people who come with the technology to go through a clinical trial, they don't know your workflow. They know a problem that a patient has, but very often they don't know your workflow. You're the unknown X factor in the middle, and you have to help them understand how their solution can fit seamlessly into your everyday workflow. If you don't tell them, they won't know. That will be the case in 99% of the cases you will ever experience, I'll guarantee you. So you're actually the person who could be the key actor, stakeholder, to make this new technology fail or flourish, because you can give them the information they don't know they need. And you're the expert who know they don't know. So really put that into play, brace yourself and dive into it, and know that you might risk losing your foothold for a minute, but then you'll stand out very strong on your feet on the other side. Thank you so much, Susie from Denmark.
Susie.
I'd like to add something to what's actually being said, if I can.
Please go ahead.
And this is what I want to add. We're all, I'm recognizing from a patient standpoint that the physicians, clinicians are busy. Your time is very well spent, and a lot of times you want to, all of us want to turn ourselves into 5 different people and do everything we possibly can to move this needle. We just can't. Your administration, your administrative staff, they're stressed out as well. So why not consider bringing in a team, a person, an independent professional patient advocate that doesn't have anyone's best thoughts in mind other than the patient, who can speak away from the organizations. They have professional patient advocate at organizations, but they're tied to that organization. But if you bring in an independent, then that frees up your time. It frees up your clerk, your administrative time, because now you're bringing in someone that's totally there for the patient and wants this to move forward. So you have a better chance of having it move forward. So I would strongly suggest and encourage each of you that's on stage, that's in this space, consider bringing in another team member, contacting us, seeing what we can offer and how we can offer it and what the best thing is for the patient. Because as long as you're stressed out, we can talk all day, nothing's going to get solved. When we don't have to talk all day, we can actually put some real movement behind what the issue is. This is Sandra, and I'm complete for now.
Sandra, this is Michael, and thank you so much for that, because you're really reinforcing the fact that disease management today, especially as complex as things have gotten, and the number of endpoints that are, parts of most clinical trials, it just becomes a very confusing and intimidating, set of circumstances. So a certified patient advocate, or a social worker, or somebody else who can come and really look at this from a multidisciplinary or a team approach is really what's needed today. And Susie, I think some of the comments that you made were spot on. I really, I think we all appreciate getting, getting an understanding of what clinicians go through, but also, recognizing that clinicians are looked at as the source of the information and the source of the understanding. So, great thoughts, all of you. I wanted to make two notes here. One is that we're having some difficulty somehow with Clubhouse, and there are a number of you who have raised hands to come up and speak, and we're doing our best to try and get you up here, but for some reason we're having a little bit of a software glitch. The second thing I wanted to offer too is that I'm going to have Julie post another resource for those of you who are in this environment of patient trust building. It's a book that came out a couple years ago, but is very pertinent to what we're talking about. So, Julie, if you'll post The Patient Will See You Now. If you've not read it, I encourage you to do so.
Michael, I'm laughing because I just had that interview with Dr. Topol, and
I know you did.
I just spent 11 hours listening to that book on audio tape, and I will tell you, it is everything that I have ever envisioned about healthcare is what Dr. Topol says basically in that book, minus Theranos.
Yes, minus Theranos. Yeah, thanks very much for the endorsement there. Eric is part of our community here in San Diego, and I just thought it might be another valuable resource on top of the book on speed of trust. So a couple of Michael, practical things.
Since you brought that up and you brought that book up, I wanted to say that my idea of trust, I think we really need to get to the heart of the issue, and it's going to come down to the data, right? We are in a new data economy. We need to change our way of thinking, and we have a chance to even the playing field here by giving people agency over their data, right? And so I think
absolutely
what we need to do in order to build that trust is to be transparent, to educate people around the value of their data and their collective data, and then give them that agency to be able to ensure their own quality of life. You have people like me who cannot work because of medical conditions, and they feel like a burden on society, but they're not. They are providing a wealth of information to all of us. We're all in jobs because people like me are sick and have issues, and we have to make people feel like they are worth something. And then we can start working on the trust. But again, those conversations around data, those happen behind closed doors before a patient even gets to it. I don't even own hospital records, right? My hospital system lost a majority of my records, and I have no recourse. So we need to put the data on the table and have those discussions. And I'm Christine, and that's my perspective. And fully endorse the book. If you have not listened to it, you gotta do it.
Well, thank you very much, Christine, because it is at the heart of the matter. We agree that both, effectively functional ownership of the data, the way in which your data is used, where it is used, by whom it is used, ought to be the purview of you as the patient. And, that's something that is very strongly espoused by the host of this particular clubhouse room, which is Consuli. And we feel very, very strongly that the future of inclusive, diverse, and the kinds of effective trials that will be done must take data management and data transparency into consideration. So very, very good. All gets to the bottom of how people end up trusting what trials they're getting into. So thanks very much for that. Sophie, I'll come back to you.
Yes, thank you, Michael. Wow, we've had such great perspectives from everyone, and we are getting close to the end of our time for this room. So I just wanted to offer that we can each take that responsibility on ourselves, right? Whether you are a patient, you are a clinician, a provider, you are at the sponsor level writing protocols or monitoring or in quality, or you are at a CRO or a core lab or any sort of partner, you can take that initiative to assess the background, the education level, and the preferences, the communication preferences, as Brad brought up earlier, of each of these partners. If you're talking to a patient, first and foremost, yeah, assess their comfort level. And like David said, make sure that you give them an opening, give them an open door, but don't pull them in. Let them, offer what they are comfortable offering. So it takes a little bit of investment on every side, not just on the part of the physician, not just on the part of the sponsor or the CRO, but from the patient as well. Sometimes sponsor representatives or CRO representatives, like we said, they don't know a day in the life of a clinician. So they sometimes don't know that a clinician has, probably 10 other responsibilities, major responsibilities in a given day outside their clinical trials. And they may be a principal investigator on 10 clinical trials simultaneously. But outside of that, they have their clinical responsibilities in the hospital. Then they have their responsibilities in the outpatient setting. And they might be driving to 2 or 3 different outpatient settings. You never know. And they have their academic responsibilities if they are at an academic center, and they have responsibilities to teach, grand rounds. They have fellows to oversee. They have residents. They have medical students. They have interns. On top of that, they have administrative responsibilities to the hospital, to managed care, to insurance companies, for coding and billing. And then if they have a title like their chief of department or chair, they will have even further responsibilities. So, one clinical trial out of all of these is only a small piece of their pie. And that's just one example. Patients also have so many things in their day that we don't think about unless we open up and ask, what are you dealing with today? What have you come in with today? We wouldn't understand what's all of the circus and, carnival that's happening in the back of their mind as they're entering the room, and like Edie said, immediately have to undress and wear a paper gown and all of these really uncomfortable things. So I would encourage each one of us to think about that. No matter who you're interfacing with, take that responsibility on yourself. If we can each do that as individuals, slowly, step by step, don't you think we could improve these processes one by one? Right? So at that, I want to pass it back to Michael, and we're going to round down this room. Thanks, Michael.
Okay. Sophie, very impassioned, as I always expect from you. You're a true patient advocate and clinician in all of this. So we're going to do a little round robin, just go around the table one time here. The idea here is for each of you to suggest what we might want to talk about as our one burning question next month. And certainly I encourage anyone in the audience or anyone who is listening to this to certainly reach out to Julie. Her email and contact on Clubhouse is in the profile, and you can certainly suggest what we should be addressing next month. I think we did a good job at making a dent in some practical approaches here, starting foundationally, but also getting some empathy for the individuals who are involved in delivering the clinical trials, as well as those individuals who are trying to enroll and get the benefit of those trials. So could I ask Sandra, if you have some thoughts about what we might want to talk about next month, it could be allied to what we're discussing here, or if you think there's a more important burning question that we need to address, please speak up. Sandra?
I would like to start off by encouraging everyone here to, especially if you have interaction with a patient, to understand that a lot of patients don't even understand what data is. They don't understand what goes into the data, so they're unable to participate whenever it comes down to it. Collecting data, looking at data, helping you do your job by collecting the data. They really have no idea. A lot of patients don't know how. I mean, they've heard of EHRs, but EHRs they don't own, so they're not able to sit in the doctor's office and do what they're able to do with my book, which is my journal, which is to write things down while they're at their doctor's office. So I'd like to encourage this group to think about having, what is data, so that you can get some other insights into exactly what is data, so that you can break it down and then begin to develop a better understanding of what's going on and why you're not getting the data that you should be getting, because a lot of patients just don't understand. This is Sandra, and thank you so much for inviting me, and I hope to be back soon. Thank you so much.
Well, Sandra, we thank you very much for your insights, and we are very grateful for what you've shared today and looking forward to you joining us next month. Edie.
Yeah, this is Edie.
Going around the block.
Yeah, I was going to say, I would be really curious to take the conversation that has been so powerful for this session and January session and focus it on how this trust relationship is then going to be an incredible factor in the uptake of decentralized trials and whether or not, that's meaningful for the patients, because I'm seeing a lot of conversation right now about we're past the point of knowing whether or not we have an ability to do decentralized or virtual trial work, but should we, right? Is every trial meant for that? Is that what a patient actually wants, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? And of course, there's a lot of conversation about the burden that creates for sites and research teams, et cetera. But just given that we're talking about trust and the importance of that relationship, what does that impact to DCTs and their uptake? I don't know, maybe I'm off base, but that would be something I think could be really interesting. Thank you. This is Edie. I'm complete.
Edie, great suggestion, because I think one of the things that hasn't come as much to the fore in regard to decentralized trials, because we've been so focused as clinical trialists on delivering those trials and maintaining quality and, getting the right enrollment, et cetera. But there has been very little discussion about how patients actually feel about that. Do they feel even more distant, even more distrustful? So, Brad, I'll come to you and ask you, what do you think about topics for next month? And is there enough here that we want to stay with it?
No, I think Edie's suggestion is perfect. And in the same vein, I would have suggested is, do decentralized trials create extra burden on patients? Does it sort of depersonalize the process? I think those are, incredibly important questions, and how that obviously affects things downstream. So no, I think that's a great topic.
Awesome. Thank you, Brad. Thanks for your participation today as well. Christine, I'll come to you, and I have pretty sure where you're going to end up on this, but go for it, girl.
I was going to say, I have so many burning questions, but I guess my one big burning question is, when will I have agency over my own data? And I think we need to start showing patients that they aren't, burdens, but they are an integral part of medicine, of science, and of the future. And I think we need to start having real discussions as to what we contribute. And I've said this before, my face, my voice, what I say makes this industry billions, but I live on Social Security disability because I need insurance. So we really need to think about these things, and especially for people who will never have that opportunity to work, how do we give them some value and some potential, especially when they're giving everything to produce new products for all the rest of us? So just my thoughts, and I'm done there. Thanks, Michael.
Yeah, Christine, I'll take that one step further and say that just what you talked about is so critical. But many patients realize that even in the efforts to get, if you will, compensated, recognized, control and agency over their data, they also recognize, sadly, that most of this isn't probably going to benefit them. It's really for the future, and for patients who come beyond them, because often there's the issue of time that they have to deal with. So thank you very much for that. And as always, thank you for being here. But most importantly, thank you for being here and making the effort after being so sick over the last few weeks. Thanks very much. David,
And hey,
I'll
Michael,
come to
one
you.
other
Yes,
thing
yes,
I
please.
wanted to say too is one other question I'd like to bring up is now that everybody is doing so much genetic testing, all of us research, we've got organizations everywhere. When are we going to start incorporating some of that technology into our clinical trials so they're a little more precise and maybe don't fail as much? So that would be another question. But sorry, it just came to me again. I'm done.
No, I know you're never done. So that is absolutely something for us to consider, is to take a look at where is all of this genomic data actually taking us. So I like that. David, I'll come to you now.
Well, as usual, I have two, I wouldn't say conflicting, opposite direction thoughts. One was, I do like Edie's idea about focusing on decentralized trials, and I wonder to what extent the type of ultra decentralized trials, where it's done at the level of each clinician being an investigator, participating in a national network that's coordinated in terms of providing them with resources and a database system to extract information from the patient's record directly into the central database, and then have a role in the analysis of that data. I would love to see if we could incorporate that into discussing decentralized trials. But in the opposite direction, I'm thinking that if we're going to explore the issue of trust further, perhaps we could explore the issue of what are the attitudes and beliefs each of us bring to our work in the area of clinical research. How do we get in touch with it? How do we deal with it? And how do we get beyond it? Because I think that it's, as a psychiatrist anyway, I think it's a very important thing to be in touch with the biases and beliefs that you bring to your work, no matter what it is, but particularly in clinical environments.
Thank you,
Hey,
David.
Michael.
Appreciate that. Yes, please.
Can I mention that if anyone's interested in decentralized trials, you should be also following DTRA, the Decentralized Trials and Research Alliance. And so that's run, Craig Lipset, Amir Kalali, and they have some amazing programs. They have a chat on Fridays as well, tomorrow, right? And so they have some amazing chats if you're looking at that decentralized space and how they're looking at. They're a great, amazing resource with some great conversations always happening there. So
along those lines, I want to recommend, I don't even know what the initials stand for, but you can look it up. ISPOR is an organization that works in the area of integrating and sharing databases across different types of surveys and different types of data collection and so forth, because I think we're moving as a whole towards the level where all different types of data, epidemiological, population-based, clinical trial-based, national health survey-based, all has to be looked at together to get a better picture of where we are in healthcare and what are the problems that need addressing.
Yeah, thank you, David. I appreciate that. ISPOR is really the Professional Society for Health Economics and Outcomes Research. For those of you on this call that might not be familiar with it, largely it's the leading, group that looks at cost of care and relevance on value proposition for therapies that are in this arena. But good points. Susie, let me come to you, and then we'll close out this session.
Thank you very much, Michael. It's always a privilege to be at the very bottom or at the very end. I think that I'll follow the lead of Christine and David, and I have two topics, and one of them is data. I think data is of the uttermost importance, and for those of you who are interested in discussing data that you can collect in the silver generation, the 18 population's own homes. I actually have a room on the topic on Tuesday. I just checked if you can see it on my profile, but unfortunately you can't. So if you follow me, hopefully you can see it. And it will be starting around this time, actually on Tuesday, where we're discussing which technologies we should put into our own homes when we turn 65 or our grandparents' homes right now. So that was an invitation. I hope to see some of you there. But the other topic is inspired by the Danish Prime Minister, New Year's speech to the nation a couple of weeks ago. And she said that COVID has shown us that we have to reinvent our health and care system. And the words that she used have been buzzing in the back of my head, so I thought that you lot would find it interesting as well, even though we are divided by a lot of time and space. And that is, she said, we have to cut the administration and bureaucracy and turn back to common sense by the people who are educated to take care of people's health. So I think my topic, to phrase it shortly, is how to make a riot and recreate the system to do what it was meant to do instead of being met by obstacles all the way. And that was the two topics for me, Susie from Denmark. And thank you for a great room.
Susie, thank you so much. It is always amazing to see how secular we get here just in looking at the U.S. And having inputs from international inputs, which we have had in the past, and we are so glad that you're doing that today. Even just on the part of Denmark, I think a lot of great questions have come forward here. We've taken notes on what's been presented here, and I want to make sure to apologize, if you will, to those individuals who tried so valiantly to get to the stage here, but for some reason Clubhouse was having some complications here, and we weren't able to do that this session. Hopefully, given the fact that it looks like we're going to extend and put a little variation on this particular topic, we hope that you'll be joining us next month. At this point, I wanted to basically close out the room here. My co-moderator, my co-moderator Sophie had to jump off, but I think we all want to give her a great round of applause and thanks, because she really did a super job in co-moderating. And I got to remember that you can't flash at the same time you're talking here because you cut yourself off. Anyway, this has been a really wonderful collection of contributors, and I hope you are all finding that this Clubhouse experience is really energizing. We've given you some reference material. We've given you some great thoughts from all of the panelists. And so in closing, my gratitude to all of you panelists. Thank you for making the special effort to be here for an hour and a half. And now I'm going to turn this back to Julie, who will take us out and finish out the coordinating bits here. So thanks again, all. And this has been your Clinical Trials Clubhouse, part of the Consuli suite. This is Michael, and I'm done speaking.
Hey everyone, thanks Michael. Thanks everyone for such a great room. Great to have all of you here today. Looking forward to the next one. As always, in closing, I Again, I'm Julie, project manager at Consuli, host for Consuli Conversations. As we wrap, just be sure to follow me, all our moderators and co-hosts here today, and be sure to check out the profiles of others that you found interesting. Tap the little greenhouse at the top, give us a follow, and check out the other rooms we host, including on long COVID and data dignity. Please follow us on social media, see what we're up to, and for any direct questions, comments, feedbacks, if you'd like to join our panel for the next time or you have someone to recommend for the panel, please send me an email. You'll find that in my profile. Love hearing from you guys. And again, for those that joined during our event or after opening announcements and don't yet know Consuli, broadly, Consuli is a public benefit company with the mission to enable individuals to participate in the data economy. Experts suggest our individual data is worth $20,000 per year. We do this by operating a marketplace for members where we become their agent and assemble their data, including health records, labs, prescriptions, wearables, quality of life surveys, and importantly, members receive smart-matched individualized offers from us for opportunities, including to participate in clinical trials as well as data trials. If any audience members are interested in the data dignity movement and would like to participate in clinical trials or learn more about how we do that, you can check us out. There's no cost to join our movement, and find us at consuli.net. That's consuli.net. We look forward to our next Clubhouse session next month. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great day.